Mariano Gomez, the Dynamics GP Blogster here. As of late, I've gotten quite a bit of questions on how you could possibly store images captured in mixed reality or augmented reality in Power Apps to a SharePoint document repository. Well, today we're here to see how that is done. Stay tuned and let's get going. Okay, the idea here is we have Power Apps and we are going to open my mixed reality sample app. So you might be asking, well, why do I actually use my phone for this? And that's because mixed reality applications require either a compatible mobile device, but certainly not a camera that sits on your desktop. So the idea here then is if I choose to view this particular model in mixed reality, and I then attempt to take a few pictures of this particular model in my mixed reality environment. So here I take one, and then I can go back and say, right here, I'm going to take another one, let's say, and then finally I take another one here. If I go back now, I have a gallery that contains those three pictures that we have actually taken in that augmented reality scenario. So now if I click save, this is actually going to get submitted to my SharePoint document library. For this particular case, I have chosen to drop the AR screenshots / portion of the file name. And we are now writing this gallery of pictures to my SharePoint repository. And if I just go ahead and refresh here, I should have actually 3 pictures that belong to the model that I just took. So if I click on this one, then I should have a viewer that basically shows that particular picture. So the question then is, how do we actually get this done? So let's take a look at that. Back in our Power Apps application, I have what I would consider the basic controls laid out for you. So here is our 3D viewer control. And that's basically pointing to this variable called my 3D object. And if you actually click on the form itself, the unvisible property then, what that will do is it will set and declare that my 3D object variable and set it to the location of the address of the actual 3D model that we're talking about. Now, the other thing that is worth noting here is I initialize or I clear my mixed pictures collection, my mixed reality pictures collection. And that collection is actually going to host the individual photos that we take when we're in our mixed reality environment. So there's only a few things here. The label here just basically points to my 3D object. So is the source for the viewer, the 3D viewer. And then the view in MR button, the source also point to my 3D object. That's cool. Everything good up to there. Now, the other one thing that we need to keep in mind here is as we take pictures in mixed reality, that's going to happen on the unchanged property of this particular control. So what we will do here is as we take pictures, we will collect every single one of them in this my mixed picture collection that we have already initialized, and then we will point that to the photos that are being taken for this control. So here actually it's pretty cool because we can leverage the self operator and then just point it to the photos. Then as in good measure, what we did was we added this gallery, and this pretty much is a blank gallery, but this gallery uses the my mix pictures as data source, and the image itself, that is this control right here, points to this item, that image URI. So that's one of the properties of the photos that are returned by the viewer when you take those pictures in mixed reality. And the only one thing I wanted to show you here is this particular item points also to this item, that image URI. And that's how you can see the image and you can see the actual address of the picture itself. The only one thing that is left is for us to develop the save button. So a few things to keep in mind here. The first thing that you will want to do is you will want to understand how these images are stored. So obviously all these images are captured and stored in Azure. And if you go back and look at the previous segment, you will notice that you can basically deduct that you basically have the address of the picture, not necessarily the picture itself, but the address of the picture. Obviously, by pointing the image to the address of the picture, which is image.uri, this is actually retrieving, this control is actually retrieving that image and transforming it into an image that you can see on screen. So the next thing then is, how do we go about sending that information over to SharePoint? Well, for all intents and purposes, what we're going to do here is we're going to set up a new flow, and that's going to be an instant flow from blank. So we already know that that's one method of actually getting images over to SharePoint. So we're going to use that one because it just works. And then the trigger is going to be a Power Apps trigger. And for good measure here, we're going to call this Mixed Reality to SharePoint, and we're going to hit create. So this is our trigger entry point. And as you know, this doesn't require anything else from our side. But in our new step, what we're going to do then is we're going to invoke SharePoint, and we're going to look for the SharePoint connector. And this SharePoint connector does allow me to specify or create a file. And then the site address for this, which is required, is going to be, I'm going to choose my Fabricam sales. So that's going to be the SharePoint site that I want to use. And now for folder path, I'm just going to go here and point to, lo and behold, a mixed reality gallery that I already have set up. Okay, that's great. For the file name, we're going to pass that on from Power Apps. So we're going to ask in Power Apps for this. And for the file content, we're going to actually add this as well, or ask for it in Power Apps. So that's good. So we have these two, and we know that the content is going to be actually the bytes and bits that form the picture itself. The file name is just the actual file name that we're going to know this particular object by when we store it in SharePoint. So that's pretty cool. That seems to be all we need for now. And then we'll come back to this in a bit. So here I'm just going to hit save. And now we're going to go back to our Power Apps application. And then we're going to write the code that basically corresponds to the save button. So the first thing I want to do is I want to click on Power Automate here. And then I want to point this to my Mixed Reality to SharePoint flow. So that's going to get added. Then the next thing is we are going to develop this control. So keep in mind a couple things. We need initially the file content, but note here that now we're dealing with a collection of items that that basically are pictures that we need to move. So it can be one, it can be many, and at the end of the day, we need to figure out a way to transfer that collection of items to SharePoint. So what I want to do here is I want to do a little bit of trick here, and what I want to do is I actually want to use the ForAll, and ForAll is going to use my mixed pictures, which is the collection, as the basis for this operation. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to call the Mixed Reality to SharePoint operation here. Now we need to pass in the parameters. So one of the first parameters is the file name. And what I want to do is I'm going to use the mid function here, and I'm going to extract out of the image URI property. I'm going to extract everything ahead of the /. And if you remember, the name of the file is basically AR screenshots and a /. And AR screenshots happens to be obviously the folder where that particular file is being stored. So I want to use the find function. And what we're going to end up finding is the first occurrence of that /. And then we're going to actually find it in the image URI. And what we're going to do then is we're going to add 1 because we need anything subsequent to that particular string of characters. Then we're gonna then do this up to the length of the actual image URI itself. Now note that our second parameter is the file content. So what I want to do here is I'm going to use the width function, and we need to define the scope. So we're going to actually start up a scope variable called pick content. And one of the things that is super cool to keep in mind here is that we want to transfer the actual content that sits in the image URI. So in order to do that, what I found out is that if you actually use the JSON function, the JSON function can then allow you to pass the image URI as a parameter, and then we can include all the binary content of that address into the scope. So what I want to do here is I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to close the parameter. And what we want to send off to Power Apps is we want to send off the picture content itself. Bear with me, because there's going to be some work that we need to do later on, but that's in essence what we need to do here. So I'm going to actually close this off, and basically use that as the initial set of parameters that we're gonna be passing on. And I think I might have missed a parenthesis, so we're gonna add that, and there we go. That makes Power Apps happy. So let's save this. We can then go ahead to File, Save, and we effectively need to publish this. So if I publish this version, what that's going to do then is it's going to update my mixed reality application. And I'm going to go back to my SharePoint repository for now. So let's just do that here. So we're going to type in that and go to Fabric and Sales and select mixed reality gallery from here. Okay. So I already have 3 files from my previous session. I'm just going to delete those for you. And what I'm going to do then here is I am going to execute, basically save this and close out from here so we can have access to the run history. And I'm going to reload the mixed reality sample application again, or the app on the screen. So I'm going to call this here. And as you can see, it's telling me that there is a newer version. And I'm going to go ahead and update that new version. So once that is loaded, I can hit View in MR. And again, I'm going to go ahead and take the pictures as needed. Okay, so here we are. And I'm going to tap here to put this. And I'm just going to take 3 random pictures. Okay, I'm back. And here is the application with the pictures taken. So keep in mind that here's the AR screenshots. And the slash, we're going to extract the name from everything ahead of this up to the JPEG and pass that on for each one of the elements in this collection. So if I hit save, that's then going to hand off the content of that collection off to Power Automate, which then is going to attempt to save those. So if I actually go back here in Power Automate and I hit refresh here, I can then see what was the status of that execution. So all of them succeeded. But if I come back here to SharePoint now and I refresh that, I should have the 3 files, but let's attempt to open it. And then what we can see here is that SharePoint complains that it doesn't understand or doesn't have a viewer for this particular JPEG file. Even if you download it, try to open it with something else, you will error out. Well, let's go back and take a look at this particular case. So if you look at this flow and you look at the message that was sent across from Power Apps, let's say we go and take a look at the download itself. What we notice here is that there's a number of header elements. That's fine. We can deal with the header elements. That's just part of the package that was sent. But note that the create file content, which is what's being passed on, actually has a number of characters in front of it. So we have a semicolon, or a colon actually, then a backslash, double quote, Then it passes in this data image JPEG base 64 until this comma. Well, as it turns out, if you actually are interested just in the content, we need to get rid of everything before that base 64, that comma, up to the semicolon, which delimits the field create file content. So I already did the math for you. That's 25 characters that we need to get rid of. Once we get rid of that, then everything ahead of this, which is from this / on, becomes the actual content that we need to pass on. But note a couple things. Well, the one thing that to Power Automate. The one thing that we need to note here is this content is already in base 64 format. As it turns out, SharePoint needs a binary content because that's what it understands and that's how it stores data. So let's go back here to Power Apps. And since we already know that it requires the elimination of those 25 characters up to that comma, what we're going to do then here is we're going to click on this Save button. And for this picture content, we want to then run that mid function against the picture content. And we're going to remove the first 25 characters. And we're going to subtract that from the total length of the picture content itself. That, in essence, allows us to obtain all the characters needed that is strictly related to the content that we need to pass on to Power Automate. So again, very cool stuff. If we look at this formatted, you will see that we're applying the ForAll function against this collection, and then we're gonna run the Power Automate flow, but in order for the file name, we're actually subtracting or taking out anything ahead of that / so we can get a nicely formatted name. And then we also applying the width to the width function to create a scope variable that is going to hold the JSON formatted version of the content at the image URI address, and then we're including all binary data for that. But then what we're doing is we applying or removing the first 25 characters from the resulting picture content scope variable, and that's what gets really submitted onto Power Automate. So, but we're not done here, because the one thing that you want to actually then do is remember that that format is already converted to base 64. So here in Power Automate, what we want to do is we want to go back here and edit this this function or this action, and we're going to create an expression with the file content to basically do the following. We're going to use the base 64 to binary because that's what SharePoint wants, and we're going to pass in the file content that is submitted. So this basically gets translated into a nicely formatted expression. We hit OK here, and then now we can save this, and then we're going to go back out here, and then we're going to run. Let's make sure we don't have anything in this library here, but we're going to remove these so you can see it run again with the clean data. So now I'm going to go back here to this. I'm going to go to File and save this, and then we're going to publish that version of the application. We're then going to go to our application viewer here, and I'm going to go back, close this, open this sample, and then I'm going to update it with the latest version of the application. And once again, I'm going to view this in MR. I'm going to take 3 random pictures again. So we have our surface. We're going to tap here and take 3 pictures of any kind. Nothing sophisticated. So we're going to go back. And now we have the 3 pictures in our gallery, therefore stored in our collection. And if I hit save, what that's going to do is it's going to then take it, submit it off to our flow that we just created. And that flow is going to write those three pictures off to SharePoint. And if I refresh here again, I should see that content. And now if we click on the JPEG, we should be able to see the pictures that I took. And that, folks, basically concludes this session. And I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave your comments below, I should say, and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.